Grateful to have all 30 of you here and 150 of you joining us via Teams or watching this video after. Again, it's a crazy year. Students, we're thankful for your willingness to tune in however you do that and be a part of that. We have these spaced. If you'd sit not on the first two rows, thank you very much. Today we have the opportunity, first of all, I want to welcome you to the Reed and Christine Halladay Executive Lecture Series. We're grateful for their support of this series and enables us to bring some great speakers. How many of you are in the Woodbury School of Business? Would you raise your hand if you're attending the Woodbury School of Business? Well, part of your experience here has been made possible by the Woodbury family. And today I'm happy to welcome Jeff Woodbury of that family, as well as some of the hanger-ons, a couple children, family members who are here with us. Jeff is a Senior Vice President of Development Acquisitions, so he does a lot of deal making. You'll be able to hear some of that, I think, as we speak. He's an officer, director, legal counsel, and Senior VP of the Woodbury Corporation. For more than 30 years, Mr. Woodbury has been an integral part of deal sourcing, financing, acquisition, brokering, design, construction, marketing, and management of numerous projects varying from university research centers and office buildings to industrial facilities and multi-tenant shopping centers. In his more than 3 decades of professional experience with the legal and development aspects of real estate, he has dealt successfully with publicly traded corporations, individual-owned companies, and a couple of farmers that you told me about just a little earlier today. He brings his knowledge and enthusiasm to UVU and into every project he designs. He earned his BA in history from the University of Utah and a JD with honors from Drake University School. In 2017, CCIM recognized Jeff as the Developer of the Year for his innovative development success. Mr. Woodbury is particularly proud of the Falcon Hill Aerospace project at the Hill Air Force Base in northern Utah. Found out today he's a father, well, I knew that already. He's a father of 4 children, but also 13 grandchildren. In early July, Jeff was involved in a serious accident that almost took his life. He was hospitalized for 7 weeks. And the first thing he said to his son, Taylor, who's with us today, is, hey, when's that thing at UVU? I still want to be able to speak there. If some of you looked at the early running of our syllabus, we were going to fill in with a lesser person, his son Taylor, and gratefully first thing he said when he got out of the hospital just 2 or 3 weeks ago is, when am I speaking at UVU? Because he was in a hospital bed and even less glamorous, a hospital gown for 7 weeks, Jeff is going to agree to sit and visit with us today as he communicates, but will you join me in welcoming Jeff Woodbury to the stage?
Let's see, I'm going to take this mask off. Not that there's anything great to uncover here, but I don't want you to think I'm going to go rob a bank after or anything. And I appreciate the hand, by the way. You know, there. I know that's probably a insensitive thing to say, but I do appreciate it. So the title to my presentation today, and I did this before I got injured, from that standpoint, is a we versus I society. And the reason why I did this is I think that we live at a really, really exciting time. And we live in a particularly exciting time for business. You know, the Woodburys have succeeded most with transitions. Woodbury Corporation's biggest year by percentage of growth biggest years occurred during the Depression. And there were a lot of changes that have occurred since then. And we've been through a lot of economic downturns and a lot of situations that have occurred, in the 100 years after that, or 90 years after that. And anytime there is a change societally in economic, social, other type of issues, we've seen economies grow and catapult into the future with the people that recognize the change. There are always people that don't recognize the change, but we feel Woodbury is particularly suited to move forward, with the changes that are taking place, partially because of our experiences in the past, partially how we've been trained and have been taught, but also a big reason why I feel like that we've moved forward is Woodbury Corporation is really a we company. And when I say Woodbury Corporation is a we company, we're a family business, and the organization is as important as making money, if not more important. Now, my cousins and brothers might argue that the reason why we've succeeded is because we've worked hard. They might say, it's because of our ethics. They might say it's because of our fiscal responsibility. And I think a number of them have been and talked at this lecture, and they've espoused all of those virtues, which are true, that they're. But my belief is the reason why we've succeeded and the reason why we've stayed together as a family is because we work for the family. We don't work for our individuals. We don't work for ourselves. We work for the collective. And it almost sounds like a Borg organization or something like that for those of you that are Star Trek people or otherwise. It may even sound sort of socialistic or communistic. I can assure you we're opportunists. We're not communists. From that standpoint, we're always looking for opportunities that will build the group. Even as an organization, we build teams. And it's been interesting to watch our company survive in an I society. So Taya, I'm going to sort of have you flip the page. Go one more. So here I show you a picture of a beautiful site. How many of you know what this is? Out of curiosity? This is Le Sacré-Cœur. Well, I know one person over there for sure knows what this. This is Le Sacré-Cœur in Paris. And I show this to you because this was built at a time when most cities were focusing on we versus I. And if you look at the neighborhood around this, the Folies Bergères down here at the bottom of the hill, I mean, there's all kinds of interesting things. It's not a rich neighborhood, but it shows that a group of people came together to build a structure that is the most prominent structure in Paris, except for maybe the Eiffel Tower, is what I would say. A lot of people would say Notre Dame or the Hotel de Ville, and they are all prominent structures and also examples of we society development. But Paris is one of my favorite cities in the world, and the reason why it's one of my favorite cities in the world is because it is focused on we. The French are passionate about their society, and they came together to create and improve the institutions that were most important to them. And a lot of people would say, oh, they're not really religious, but they are. More things close on Sunday in Paris than in Utah by a long shot. I mean, there are all kinds of examples of why things are more important to them. Let's flip the next page, next slide. So here's London, okay? And London, starting a little before 1920, converted from a we community to an I community. And the reason why I sort of say to you that it converted to an I community is you start seeing the financial institutions, you start seeing the skyscrapers and structures that you just don't see in central Paris anywhere. Anything like that is built outside of Paris. It's not built in Paris. And what happened is we started building buildings and structures that are focused on individual companies' successes. So these are the monuments that became important to society at that point in time. Let's flip forward another one. This is my favorite cathedral in France. And you can tell I'm sort of a Francophile because I had a degree in history. These are things that I studied. These are things that I found fascinating. But my wife and I, every time we go to France, we find ourselves in this community, in this cathedral. It's just fascinating, the detail, how the Masons put this structure together. Next. Probably one of my most favorite cities in the world, second only to Paris, is New York City. And one of the reasons why I like it so much is that it's the loneliest place in the world. I had an apartment there for 15 years. never knew any of my neighbors, could walk down the street in a pretty seedy neighborhood and they thought I was just a Hasidic rabbi, or something like that. They left me alone. I felt totally safe. But this is a city that is totally focused on the I. People don't even really talk to you very much in the city, and it's something that really exploded, in the Roaring 20s. So we've had about 100 years where business is focused on what am I going to make? What am I going to get paid? What am I going to accomplish? You see that in the tech industries today. You see it in so many industries. And people go to business schools because they want to get rich, from that standpoint. What I'm suggesting to you today is you might want to go to business school to build a wealth in a different manner. Next. Interestingly enough, look at Salt Lake City. What was Salt Lake City like until the 1920s? Basically, we had a prominent church and we had a prominent government building. Salt Lake City was a we society. It was built by the community. The amount of wealth required by our pioneers to be able to build a structure like the Salt Lake Temple. A lot of people, if you read Arrington's economic history of Utah, the reason why it took so long for the LDS Church to build the temple wasn't because of complicated construction or any of those types of issues, is because they were paying for it as they go. And they were paying for it on the backs of their members. And it took a long time to build it, if you study it, because they couldn't pay for it. Now today we look at the LDS Church and its wealth, but we don't recognize it in its beginnings, and how that economic place was to occur. But probably my third favorite city in the world is Salt Lake City. And the reason why I live here, I can live anywhere I want, is because this is a great place. Next. So let's talk about real estate developers in society a little bit. And I've already talked about it to a certain degree. Let's go to the next page, Tay. The Masonics, in modern Western, the Masons in modern Western society were probably the first real estate developers. And basically they were paid for by communities, there, and they were paid in food, basically, to build city walls. And all through Europe, you can see the city walls that were originally built by the Masonic orders. And they were a brotherhood of people that came together in order to build those walls. And interestingly enough, the way they build them is they build a big quarry in the middle of a town, and the quarry would be, 50 and 60 feet deep, and they would mine the rock in order to build the wall around that. And they thought, well, since we have this big hole, we might as well build some secret ways out of the city. And so they started building secret passageways out of the city in order to be able to protect the people if they were under siege and they were going to lose their walls and they were going to get taken. So they built secret passageways. And only the Masons knew where all those secret passageways were, because they didn't want their enemies to discover how to get out of those secret passageways. And that's where the secrecy of the Masonic orders really started. Dan Brown makes a big deal about a lot of other issues, but that's really how it all got started. And then they started saying, well, maybe what we'll do is we'll have our own armies, and we'll have our armies sneak out our secret passageways and attack the people from behind, and that's why we'll protect our siege. Anyway, there are a lot of little complicated things that the Masons developed, in developing cities in Europe. And these cities became so successful that they started building up their church institutions and their government institutions, that they were thankful to God for being able to provide them those opportunities. Instead of shopping, they were supporting their churches. And when you go to a lot of these cities in Europe, it's amazing to me that they could build churches like they built. And they built them over hundreds of years on the backs of the societies that supported them. And it was such a major part of that. Well, in an I society, we're building it on the backs of the workers and these big companies. And, we build buildings. Let's go to the next page. Oh, this is an example of a walled city. Next page. We built buildings like the Chrysler Building. It was, the Walter P. Chrysler Building originally, the Empire State Building. We built all these institutions that we started to honor in all these cities rather than the churches. We weren't looking to God as our thankful provider. We were looking to these major corporations and these major mills of our there. Go on to the next page. So the reason why Woodbury Corporation has succeeded, as I mentioned to you before, is because we became focused on building communities. My grandfather in his early years, and you can read articles in old newspapers in the 30s and 40s where he talked about trying to build the communities. And he brought a lot of industrial companies to Salt Lake City to provide jobs for the communities and help Salt Lake City become a 21st century city. We decided early on that we were going to be a we developer rather than an I developer. And, for the most part, other than the Woodbury School of Business, I don't think people really realize who we are. I don't even think, in most communities we're building in, we try to be as low-key as possible. We do that for a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason is it's really not about us. It's about the community that we're going into. Next page. My grandfather, in the early years, this was his team. His team was my grandmother, his sister Nettie Woodbury Miller. Interestingly enough, Nettie was Thomas Monson's First Relief Society president when he became a bishop, there in his 20s. I think he was 21 when he became a bishop in Salt Lake City. And he talked to me a lot about Nettie at various functions. His brother Harvey, his brother Melvin, and his brother-in-law, LeGrand Richards. I mean, that was his team. That was the team. In fact, people don't realize this, but Woodbury Corporation started as the LeGrand Richards Company. LeGrand Richards sold out to my grandfather, in an effort to, when he started his service with the church, and he didn't want to have conflicts. And so my grandfather bought him out. My grandfather actually bought him out several times because there were times when he came back and the company had grown too much and he felt uncomfortable coming back into the company, and so he started another company, and then he'd come to my grandfather and say, I've received another calling, I need to buy out. But this is the way families work. This is how a family is. And this is how my grandfather started the company. He went to his family and said, I don't know what I'm going to be able to pay you, but as we make money, we'll share it and we'll pay more money to you over a period of time. And I can't tell you enough times as a little kid going to our office. Randy Woodbury's here. He's our president of our company now. I remember going to our office at 711 East South Temple, and Nettie Miller would find something for me to do while I, to tend me and do her job at the same time. But, a family business. Next. The next generation, as they took over, they actually took over at a time when my grandfather was still alive. He formed a partnership with them called Buyers Syndicate. And it was the three of them together, and they shared everything together, as a company. And it's probably a good thing that they did, because my father was always out doing deals. My uncle was always trying to make sure that we figured out a way to pay for the deals and make sure that all of the finances at home worked well. I mean, my father, until his old age, had no idea what he was worth. He would call my uncle to see if he had enough money to pay for a car, or all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just the way he was. He never cared about that side of the world. To be honest with you, I kind of tend to be that way a little bit myself, as other people will know. From that standpoint. And so my father really needed my uncle, but on the other hand, my uncle really needed my father, because University of Place would have never happened, if it had been left up to my uncle. And so, they were a perfect match for one another, and they built the team underneath them to support them, from that standpoint, under kind of the same philosophy. The company had grown more than double since my grandfather's time, and the company continued to grow next. With the third generation, and this is the ugly crew that is still kind of at the top, but really the fourth generation is doing a lot more than the people at the top will probably want to recognize. Now all of a sudden we had 5 people working versus 1, there. And the company grew by percentages, significantly more than that. And I think we have, over 1,000 W-2s. In our center core group, it's about 150 people that are part of our teams. And most of those teams have been with us a long time. And one of the reasons why is because we don't focus on individual successes. We focus on collectively Woodbury Corporation successes. In the presentation, they represented me as Developer of the Year. I've always been a little bit embarrassed about that award. I think it's piled in some junk on my desk at the office, the actual award is. I've never kind of, pulled it out of there because I felt like it always should just say Woodbury Corporation as the Developer of the Year. I don't think it should be me as an individual, in that situation. Next. But our goal has been to build projects that benefit society. When Nordstrom's left University Place, a lot of people were in the family were really nervous about, what's going to happen, to the shopping center as a whole. To me, I looked at it like, wait a minute, this is one of the greatest opportunities that we will have. And when I say we will have, I mean we as a company will have, because we had 120 acres of prime property right between BYU and UVU. The geographic center of Utah County. And we have an opportunity to change the project from something that was antiquated and falling apart to change, over the future. And what we did, we'll go to the next page, is the first controversial thing that I had that we had to push for. If I say I want you to know I mean we. First thing we had to push for is getting rid of over 2 acres of parking to create a park, and to create a free play area in the corner of that park, to put a fountain in, over $1 million fountain, all of these things done with no return, there. But our goal was, well, wait a minute, we want to create a place for the community. We want this to be a place where they come on the 4th of July and watch fireworks. We want this to be the place where we'll have concerts. We want this to be a place where we'll have yoga classes and various other activities. And we have a staff trained to try and create activities in this park. Now with social distancing, we've had fewer activities, but we're getting on top of it, to be able to do more of those activities. This became our focus of changing the project to be a part of the community. We really believe that every mixed-use development should have a place like this within it, and that all future developments in the future have to be mixed use, because that's creating community. And the importance of cars, there's all kinds of changes that are going to be happening here in the next 10 years. I think a lot of the major changes are going to occur in as little as 10 years, but they definitely are going to start occurring over the next 20 years. And this was the first example of changes that we have started to put in place. My family hates it when I say this, but department stores are dinosaurs. And they still exist to a degree, and you need to have some of them, but you guys don't shop in department stores. You shop for all that crap online. You only go to a shopping center for the entertainment and for specific new things that only exist in shopping centers. From that standpoint. And you go to it because you like to be around other people. You want to be a part of something. We've built now just short of 1,000 housing units now at University Place. Our goal is to do about another 1,000, and then we'll be done with that. Now we're going to start focusing more and more on the office. It was controversial for us to put a LED screen on an office building in the corner. It's really a sunblock, on that building, because there you can see through it when you're in the office building looking out, but you see a screen on this side of the building. It was a cost with no return, there. And so, these types of decisions are hard, but for a company like Woodbury, we saw the importance of this to the community. And that's how we made that decision. And for you to understand how we make decisions, every Wednesday we get together as a family and we hash out the decisions that we make on a regular basis. And when I say we hash it out, my father had a little card in his wallet that said, if partners always agree, then one of you isn't necessary. And we have a lot of discussion, hard discussion in those meetings. But it's not about an individual's viewpoint that's the important thing. It's about really what's best for our whole company. And sometimes it's the wrong time to make some of these decisions. Sometimes, these decisions are hard, but we go ahead and we recognize that this is for the benefit of the project as a whole. Next. This is, of course, a project I'm really proud of. And this is at Falcon Hill. This is in Roy, Utah. This is at Hill Air Force Base. We have the development rights of about 500 acres there. And when we started this project, it took us 7 years to put this project together with the Pentagon. Talk about an approval process with the city. Approving something with the federal government is a Herculean task. I felt like I was rolling a boulder up a mountain, and I kept thinking, okay, I'm going to get to the top of the mountain, and then this thing is going to roll down the hill really easy. But what I discovered when I got to the top of the mountain is that it was actually flat on top, and it was still going to be a lot of work after I got to the top of the mountain, from that standpoint. But as a company now, we've built about 600,000 square feet, and by the end of next year, we'll have just short of 1 million square feet there, and we'll eclipse that shortly thereafter, all with AAA credit tenant leases. And these are with big companies that have been in business for a long time. And the amount of new jobs we're bringing to Utah, Northrop Grumman announced that they felt like that by the end of next year they'll have 5,000 new jobs. These are new jobs. These aren't existing jobs to the state of Utah. And although the hiring office has been in California, they're moving the hiring office to Utah, and they think it could eclipse 10,000 jobs. And these are the opportunities, and this is for mostly software or business people. They're up there, and it's really a boon to the state of Utah. And this is what our vision was, is we saw this as an opportunity to create the community, associated with this. Next. So, communities. What are communities? Well, community probably starts with family. And the Woodburys have certainly capitalized on cheap labor of their family for a long time. And so that's true. But the other part of it is that we end up having a lot of people that have joined our company family. And we've tried to create an environment that people that work with us will feel secure and say, hey, I'll always be able to do this. We've tried to create a fun workplace. I believe that I've done a lot of team building activity with my groups of people. And when I say that, I really try and take my team, all over the country to look at stuff. Because you can look at all the pictures you want in the world, but until you actually see something and see how it works, you don't really learn how it's going to occur. The other part of this, beyond our company family, is friendships. The biggest asset the Woodburys have is we have tremendous friendships, both in the real estate development world, in the banking and finance world. I mean, there are so many things we wouldn't be able to do if we didn't have the support of insurance companies, banks from all over the country, finance companies, investment firms, etc. Our relationships are an asset beyond belief. And then the other thing that I want to say to you is just basic friendships. If I were to give advice to business school students, I would be use your time here at UVU to make as many friends as possible. And choose your friends wisely. And pick those friends that will help you advance your ideas and listen to their ideas. And come together like my grandfather as a 21-year-old at Woodbury Corporation, from that come together with them and start discussing the ideas so how you can start building your own companies. Now the tendency is to look for a job and get, I listened to somebody say, well, I graduated from the UVU School of Business and I don't have a job yet. And I'm going, so what's holding you back? There. And he says, well, I don't have a job yet. And I go, well, you're a smart guy. Why haven't you found a group of people to be able to start doing something with that? And if you understood the history of my grandfather was a furniture salesman. And after World War II, he couldn't sell furniture because the delivery times from the factories were so long that he sat down with his brother-in-law, LeGrand Richards, and said, hey, why don't you come work with me? We can work on this, we can work on that. His first real estate development was a house that he figured out how he could kind of turn it into a duplex and build an apartment on it, from that standpoint. And now, look what it's become. But it's from those friendships that will spark more wealth than you will ever imagine. And, some of these friendships don't work out. And, because some people are narcissistic, some people are, there, and you'll learn over time the most valued friendships. And I've certainly had my friendships that have not necessarily been the most profitable. But on the other side of the coin, I've been so blessed with the friendships that I have had. And so I've learned that friendship part of the community is probably the biggest portion and the biggest opportunity portion for business students today. Lastly, I want to talk about the community. The community will support you if you support the community. And a big part of life is learning to give back, from that standpoint. Years ago, my grandfather, my uncle, and my father started giving scholarships to UVU. Back then, it was Utah Technical College. There, and they were primarily given to single mothers, is what they did. And they felt like, well, this is a way we can give back. And our involvement with UVU, none of us have gone here, from that standpoint. Probably more of us went to that evil place up the way, from that standpoint, rather than, or the evil place even further away up to the north, or even some of us to way up to the north, from that standpoint. But the reason why we developed a relationship, and we're so thankful for our relationship with UVU, is we found that the community will support us more if we continue to give back to the community. And so that's the other thing. Even as a young student, you can afford to start giving back, even if you're just giving back with your time, from that standpoint. It doesn't require cash. It just requires a little bit of service. And that's probably the fourth part of the community that I really recommend that you remember to always focus on. And even the poorest person can give something back. And I'm not going to give you any misty-eyed stories because I have a lot of them. There where little things that people have done to help me, there have made a difference in my life. And I just have come through a harrowing accident where I probably should have died, there. But I think I lived so that I could give this talk here to you today. Just joking. But in any event, so many people that I don't even know, showed up to serve me. And they didn't know who I was. And that's what I want to bear on you, is that as business students particularly, you have more to give than almost anybody else. And you have to make that a function of your life. And the reason why I talked about this being exciting times is because maybe with the COVID, maybe with the Black Lives Matter, maybe our society will start looking at how we as a community can help one another more. And if we help one another more, we'll accomplish so much more. And, that's the real reason why the Woodburys have continued to succeed, is because it isn't about an individual. It's about selflessness versus selfishness. And that's what I recommend that you work forward in the future. I don't think there's anything else, is there, Tay? Oh yeah, I want to show you this. Does anybody know what this is? I see some people kind of shaking their head. This is the vessel. And this is at a real estate development in New York called Hudson Yards. And this is kind of an indication to me that maybe we are turning back to a we society a little more. I've decided in all of my projects going forward, I want a vessel in our projects. And I don't think I can afford to build this project. I think this project cost tens of millions of dollars to actually build. It's kind of an Escher-like piece of art that sits in this development. It's probably, I don't know how many stories, it's probably 7 or 8 stories tall, maybe 10 stories tall, there. And it's an incredible, if you're in New York City, it's a place you need to go. You need to go to the vessel. And you need to experience this. But our park at University Place, right now, it's a park. In the future, maybe we'll have a fantastic piece of art in there. I'll have to arm wrestle with my cousins about that and my children about that. Maybe we'll put a fantastic piece of art here at UVU. Wait a minute, we have the windows here at UVU that are probably, it's one of the most incredible things that you can have at any university, from that standpoint. But we have to start creating things that are aesthetic, that are built for the community rather than for the individuals. And I think you're going to see more and more in our society today be more focused toward that rather than using every square inch of land to create a return. And that's basically my presentation. I hope that this has been beneficial to you. I know it's different than you would probably expect in a business school class, but it's a case in point of what I've learned in my 40 years of business.
There may be a few questions.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, well, I think you need to come up with principles first that you're going to go into business with. I'm going to start with your brother and you first, okay? I think you have to come up with principles that you're going to run your business based upon. And the hard thing about the bulldozer personality is they want to outrun their coverage. I mean, use a football analogy just because football started playing this last weekend, from that standpoint. And so you have to put some reins on that horse and make sure that horse goes in the right direction and everything. And so you have to get that bulldozer type person to sort of recognize those reins. But in order to succeed in business, you need a bulldozer. If Woodbury Corporation parked their ship in a harbor, yeah, we'd survive for a generation or so, but the ship would ultimately rust up and be worthless. So you have to get out to sea one way or another. And so my advice to you is can you put the restraints on that bulldozer so that you can retain that coverage, there and be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. If you can't do that, then I don't think you should do it. The other thing is you need to recognize the value of one another. And that's hard to do with individuals. An individual kind of say, well, I did this, you're worthless. If you have that type of attitude at all, you fail. you know, from that standpoint. You know, the long term of the individual is not really where it's at. You know, narcissistic people, you can't build any organization and you can't build any longevity in life around that. I used to look at Woodbury Corporation, I used to say, well, all these other companies are so much better than us. You know, because they were big, they were REITs, they were all this kind of stuff. But you don't know how many hundreds of those guys have failed now, or they've sold to somebody else, and their company has just been, put in, as part of the, other companies. And the reality of it is that if you're at something really for the long term, you need to come up with those principles where you can look far enough down the road where you can succeed. So, yeah, I understand your reason to be reticent, but on the other side of the coin, unless you get a bulldog like that as part of your organization, your ship never goes anywhere. You never really accomplish anything. So be thankful for that guy, but have him recognize that the wagon can only move so fast before it falls apart. On the future of malls, I don't want to talk specifically about University Place, there, but the future of malls is changing dramatically. I think there will always be a place for shopping and for entertainment and for food, and shopping has to become entertainment. I think retail's changing dramatically. I look at Alice Sporting Goods. They're having a bumper year. They're just killing it. And when I say that, they're selling almost as much now out of 30,000 feet than Nordstrom was selling out of 100,000 feet, to give you kind of an example. Their University Place. There are certain businesses that are focused on what people want. And it's not just what millennials want. Millennials don't have a lot of money to spend, to be honest with you, from that standpoint. It's really their parents we have to capture, from that standpoint. So you have to put in stores that people want to go through the experience. Whole Foods. I can go through a whole series of stores, and so University Place specifically is working on and is trying to attract more of those types of tenants for the future, and so that they have that type of retail. But just look at what housing is. Housing is now a bigger part of our NOI than retail is. I think office will become a bigger part of our NOI than retail is currently. And so you can start seeing what the transformation of all mall properties will become. I think Simon just announced a month ago. I read the Wall Street Journal every morning, so any information that I have like this comes from the Wall Street Journal, and it may be false, but I read an article while I was in the hospital that here I am, I don't have arms. It looks like this. I have an arm here, but I have no feeling in this hand. I lost all feeling in this hand, but so I have a nurse turning the page for me, and then they got me a device that I could turn the page with my mouth, while I'm in the hospital. But anyway, I'm reading there that Simon feels like all department stores are dinosaurs. Well, I've been saying this for a long time, that these stores are terrible. We should just get rid of them all. And, every mall's been trying to hang on to it. Well, the real estate is the key. And that's what a real estate company should always be focused on. University Place's value is in its land. And the location of the land is critical. And society will want something in that land that will be valuable long term. And so when I look at a place like University Place, I am just more excited about it than ever before. And I'm looking for the COVID opportunities, I'm looking for the Black Lives, I'm looking for the societal changes that this will be the place where we can create that. And obviously we don't want to just throw stuff away and leave a blank piece of dirt there. We're going to soak that pig as long as we can, so that we get the appropriate marinade there, so that we have a great meal in the end for the whole society rather than just for us. I don't know how I can say it differently than that.
Jeff, I have a question from
Yeah.
one of our students online. Where can I learn more about the We Society? Is there a book that I could read? Is there...
Well, I think that you got to read a lot of books to be able to do it. And, you know, I read a book a week at least. And, you know, there are all kinds of things to talk about it. But, you know, if you want to read some philosophy, what Robert Campbell is something that I would read. You know, he talks a lot about how, you know, the individual is what the problem with a lot of these things are. And selfishness is really the problem. And he's kind of a philosopher. You know, if you're LDS, read your Book of Mormon. You know, look at the fall and success of societies. I mean, I hate to be simple like that. I also think that there's a lot of interesting stuff if you're a classical scholar at all. You know, read about Marcus Aurelius. You know, read. You know, there are a lot of different books that I would read. You know, I think Sam Zell is one of my. If you're a business person and you're trying to figure out how to build an organization, you know, here's a billionaire that started with his buddy at the University of Michigan. You know, he graduated from law school and didn't get one job offer, didn't get hired by one law firm anywhere, you know, there. And he had good grades and everything, but he put on his resume that he had done these business deals while he was at the University of Michigan. And finally, one law firm called him in and said, hey, we want you to do business deals for us. We don't want you to be a lawyer. And he wanted to be a lawyer. You know, there, but then his first law project was such a bore to him that he decided, well, I can do business deals and be much more productive than that. But, you know, he has a book called Am I Being Too Subtle that I would recommend that you read. You know, you have to pull it out of a lot of different things. It's not something that I can tell you that there's a book that's specifically written about this for business students. And so you have to pull the bits and pieces about. But what you'll do is you'll read about these people and you'll discover really what made them great. And what made them great is they became selfless at some point in time in their life. You know, Titan by Ron Chernow. Chernow is the guy that wrote Hamilton. You know, he's a great writer. I didn't particularly love Hamilton, but I can promise you Titan, it's about John D. Rockefeller, is a great book. And in his late years particularly, he recognized really what life was all about. Next. Any other questions?
We're out of time. I'm sure we'll have more questions. There may be a slot open for lunch if you want to see Maddie. Maddie, raise your hand, please. Thank you for coming. Could we I don't know how to say this nicely because I don't want to offend you. Can we clap? Is that better than say give you a hand?
Clap, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.